Greetings, X, Twitter. I'm back again, live, and I wanted to basically, I'm going to revisit the topic of the last live tweet that I did, a live stream that I did, and that was with respect to the impeachment of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He was acquitted before, and a lot of stuff has been heard on the web. Basically, a lot of criticism, and a lot of people have been questioning the validity or the legitimacy of the impeachment trial. And in all honesty, I mean, if we were to go back and look at it, pardon my throat, but there are a lot of instances in the impeachment trial that made this a little bit questionable. And I think I've gone on my Twitter. I've gone and comments. I've gone and I've reiterated what these questionable items were. The statement that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, made at the beginning of the trial. He said this trial is going to be political. I asked myself, why would he say that at the beginning of the trial? What was he trying to convey? I mean, when you hear that statement, the statement itself means that more along the lines, this is going to be a battle between the political parties. That is the main inference nowadays you get when you deal with that statement. So it kind of made things sound a little strange. There was other things like the $30 million donation that was $2 million loan and $1 million donation that was made to Dan Patrick's campaign during the course of the impeachment trial. That was from a party that supports Ken Paxton. So that also kind of made this impeachment trial be a little bit questionable, whether most people want to admit that or not. Then the statement that Dan Patrick made after the impeachment trial was over, which kind of made him look biased, and it's not hard to make that assumption given the tone of what he said and what he said. And then obviously the vote itself was very questionable, and the reason I say it was questionable is because there was an overwhelming consistency in the vote. The same senators voted to acquit each and every time. Kind of makes you think that maybe they were all in agreement from the beginning that maybe they weren't going to prosecute him, that they were going to get him off the hook. I mean, I don't know if that's for certain or not. The jury of senators said that's not the case, and they're denying it left and right. But I mean, it's hard not to come to that conclusion when you see these things. Now, since then, there's been ongoing disputes and criticisms of Dade Phelan, the Speaker of that Texas House, of Dan Patrick, the Lieutenant Governor and President Pro Tem of the Texas Senate. And there's been statements back and forth from senators and state representatives saying, okay, whether they agreed or they disagreed with the impeachment trial. But when I saw today, and this is where I wanted to touch on without getting, overlapping too much, is that the whistleblowers And this is something that I mentioned back in the last live tweet I said, because I said, just as many others said, okay, Ken Paxton is not out of the woods yet by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, because he still has to deal with a securities fraud trial. He still has to deal with an FBI investigation that will more than likely lead to an indictment. And then he's got the whistleblower lawsuit that he's still got to deal with because of the fact that the House of Representatives never did okay and never did approve the settlement amount that he was asking for these whistleblowers. And I believe I had said to the extent that if there was no settlement, that the whistleblowers were going to have to take this to court. And today, the whistleblowers gave a press conference and said that is exactly what they intend to do, that if there is no settlement, they're going to ask the Supreme Court to remove the trial from abatement and reinstate it in the district court so that they can continue with their lawsuit, because none of the criteria in the pre-settlement was met. You know, so they took a stand and they said that the evidence, that what they testified was firsthand evidence, firsthand eyewitness testimony, and that it is clear and acceptable by standards of law. I tend to believe that might be the case. I mean, that might be true. But what caught my eye was that it was two things. One, if we look at and we analyze both sides of the coin, or both sides of the equation, as far as where everybody stands in all of this, you'll see that prosecutory wise, the whistleblowers are pushing forward. They've been totally transparent. They've said, well, we will be willing to go before the media and answer questions. We stand by our testimony. It's true. The evidence corroborates it. The evidence points to it. They've been adamantly going in this news conference. They've been adamantly willing to be transparent about it and discuss it and prove that what they're saying is true. Well, this leads to question, okay, if they're so certain of what they're doing and they're willing to confront the media, they're willing to talk about their experience, talk about what they're doing, then why doesn't Ken Paxton do the same? Okay? Why doesn't Paxton's attorneys do the same? We don't know. What is interesting, however, is that in this press conference that was given earlier today, there was a challenge that was issued to Ken Paxton. And I want to play this on the video clip of this from this news conference, so you can hear. These are the whistleblowers themselves. They are issuing a challenge to Ken Paxton, and it's going to be interesting. And I'm going to try to flip over here. We're going to play this, and I want us to hear exactly what they said. Okay, this is the video. Let's hear it out. Okay, we heard this. It's interesting. Very interesting. They've hereby issued a challenge to Ken Paxton saying, okay, um, why doesn't he come before the media in a neutral venue? Notice they used the word neutral venue, and come before media that are experienced. And I'm guessing what they're saying here is that, they want whoever the media that is going to be dealing with it, they want them to be well versed on the evidence and the testimony, so that they know what to ask and how to ask it. They're challenging Attorney General Ken Paxton to basically, confront the public about the topic, because if you remember, Ken Paxton, he was absent from the impeachment trial the whole time. He did not testify. He was not present to confront his accusers. So everybody's asking, well, shouldn't Ken Paxton be called to explain himself? Shouldn't Ken Paxton address the media and say, okay, this is what happened. This is my story. It's interesting though, because in this instance here, the defendant is quiet, is silent the whole time. Is silent, in hiding. I guess you can say he refused to speak out. His attorneys more than likely prohibited him from testifying, which, as understandable, an attorney would do that. But still, in the court of public opinion, in front of the media, he should at least, come out and explain himself. And that's the one thing. And this is something that there was something else in this press conference, and I've pointed this out a number of times, not just with Ken Paxton himself, but with several different political elected officials. I mentioned it, I believe, with Ted Cruz, with Donald Trump. I mentioned it with Jim Jordan. Mentioned it with a number. Most of the people that I mentioned this about were conservative, and for good reason. And that is that conservatives, and this is interesting, conservatives tend to side with only one or two media outlets. They don't want to confront the mainstream news media. They're scared. I mean, all I can think is they're scared of them. They don't have the cojones to confront media outlets like ABC News, CBS News, NBC News, CNN, Associated Press. They don't have the balls, the testicular fortitude to say, okay, I'm going to talk to these people, and I'm going to answer the hard questions. They don't. They've always been like this from the get-go. Okay, always, and unfortunately, I mean they're dead set. And it came out in the trial here, however, that Ken Paxton had a list of reporters that he would not talk to. This confirms more. I mean, just about everything I have said on this particular subject from the beginning. These conservative Republican elected officials do not want to confront the general media. They don't have the cojones. They don't have the balls to do it. And it's high time that they do. Governor Greg Abbott is another example. He'll go on Newsmax. He'll go on Fox News. He'll go on any Fox station. But get him to go on another television station, it's really next to impossible to get him. Ken Paxton's the same. To be honest, and this is me saying something about the news media here in Houston, where I'm from. I think I have yet to see Ken Paxton on any of the local stations here in Houston. I've yet to see. I don't think I've seen him. Maybe on Fox 26, but I don't see him on KHOU. I don't see him on ABC 13, Click to Houston, or any of the local news affiliates here. And also, if you go back and you look at a lot of these news sites, when they talk about Ken Paxton, or they talk about conservatives like Governor Abbott or any Republican conservative elected officials in Washington, they say, well, we asked them, and when we asked them, we have requested a comment, and they have not returned our message, or they not returned our call. Why? Because they refuse to speak to them. And I think, ergo, this tells us a great deal, and in the sense that more than likely the elected individual or the elected party that hides behind secrecy 90% of the time, and this, I'm not being political by saying this, but the majority of the time it's because they have something to hide, or because they know for a fact that they're doing something wrong. Okay? That's one of the reasons why they don't approach, or they don't approach the public to dispute directly what it is they're doing. Here's another example. In Washington, for example, the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan is going off on these witnesses that he's calling in and saying that they need to answer his subpoenas. They're not doing it. They're violating or quashing. They're violating a direct subpoena. When in fact, when he's confronted about the subpoena that he's avoided, he clamps down. He shuts up. He doesn't talk. Why? Because he knows for a fact that he's in the wrong. It's plain and simple. So, and I think the same thing happened. The same thing is going on with Ken Paxton. Paxton is not going to talk to the public because he knows that he's hiding something somewhere. And in my honest opinion, if Paxton wants to challenge me on that and he wants to come forth and give his side of the story, he's more than welcome to. I'm not going to be as forthright and restrictive in my challenge to him as the whistleblowers were, because it's not in my position to do so. But the way I see it is that if they're silent on something, it's more than likely because there's something else, something more to the story. Logic dictates it. I remember that, and I've had instances where I've had to deal where I've seen, adults correcting minors or children, and they question them and they say, why did you do what you do? Why did you do what you did? Or they try to talk to them, and these kids clamor up. They get quiet. Why? Because they know they did wrong, and they don't want to admit to it. Well, I think this is the same scenario with Ken Paxton. That he knows he's done something wrong, yet he doesn't want to address it. He doesn't want to dispute it because he knows he more than likely will have to admit to it. That's the only thing that I can think of that, makes sense in all of this that we're seeing. The fact that the whistleblowers are so adamantly coming out in public and defending themselves and saying we're going forth with the lawsuit. The fact that they've defended their testimony, The fact that they've challenged Ken Paxton, you know, and that they've challenged the attorneys to dispute. Now the question is, will Ken Paxton, will his attorneys be forthright? Do they have the balls? Do they have the guts, the intestinal fortitude to come forth and confront the media and address these issues head on? I mean, it's the ball is in their field now, in their position. Are they going to run with it, or are they going to fumble it? That's the bottom line. Are they going to run with the ball and confront the issues head on, or are they going to fumble it and keep quiet? It's a matter of waiting and seeing at this point if there is a response from Ken Paxton or his attorneys or not. And I'm at this point going to wait and see. If there is a response, I may come back live and talk about it. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that respect, because the challenge has been issued, and it's up to Ken Paxton to man up and say, okay, you want me to talk to the media about this? Let's do it. Because if Ken Paxton has nothing to hide and knows that he's done nothing wrong, he should have no problem whatsoever. And hear me out. He should have no problem whatsoever coming out to the media. Why doesn't he? Think about that. And I leave you with that thought. If he's done nothing wrong, why doesn't he address the media? Thank you.